So what we're in is we set up a demo for a field day recently, and we did look at a couple of the premixes that were available at Green Cover Seed, because what we did is we wanted to get some mixes that had quite a bit of components to it, because we did want to give the chance for growers to come out and look at how these individual mixes not only looked in the field, but how they looked whenever they were in a more high diversity mix. So quite a few of the mixes we'll talk about today are really high number of cover crops. I think the lowest number of cover crops we have in a mix is 12, and we're all the way up to nearly 45 in one of our mixes. This is one that is called the Summer Release mix. This is one that is really highly marketed for food plots. It's one that, you know, wildlife are really high on, has a lot of really high quality broadleafs like our sunflowers, some okra, has some of our legumes like our mung beans, our cowpeas, and our soybeans, but it also has some for, you know, the deer and the other wildlife that are more grazers to be able to get some of the more of the energy and some of the nutrients. So we do have some sorghum sedan and some forage sorghum in here. So it's a good mix of primarily broadleaf and legumes with a little bit of grasses. One of the challenges with this mix is up until a couple of weeks ago, the canopy of this mix was relatively low. And so if we're worried about wind erosion, water erosion, up until about a month after planting, this can be pretty susceptible to high amounts of wind and water erosion. Because we did plant it with a drill, we did have these you know, distinct wind rows to where we could have and we are planted north-south, so we could have just a really high south wind kind of blow right down the rows and create quite a bit of wind erosion there. But what this does do is kind of like its term is a release, it's a really good nutrient scavenger, and it will release a lot of those nutrients very rapidly compared to some of our other mixes, because it doesn't have a lot of high carbon into this mix. So if a grower would go out there and only want to look at recycling nutrients for a successive cash crop, or would like a really rapidly broken down crop to where we didn't have a lot of residue in the way of the successive cash crop, this would be one that you would look at. On the same or the opposite side of the coin, this doesn't have the long-standing residue, so we wouldn't get that high amount of shielding or covering of the row longer into the season. If you are planting something like wheat that you expect to get a canopy relatively quickly, or especially if you're going in future years going to plant like a corn or sorghum, this might be okay because that crop itself will shield the soil, but this one won't shield the soil all that well. But what you will see is within a couple of months a really rapid cycling of the nutrients. So if you're looking for a very rapid nutrient cycling cover crop, this would be a nice one for you. So think if you're going into wheat this coming up fall and you want that release to happen right around or coming out of the winter time, this might be a very nice cover crop, because not only do we have a good amount of nitrogen that could release, but some of these sunflowers with the big taproot could go down and get some nitrogen or some phosphorus and potassium micronutrients and recycle it and redistribute it on the top end of the soil. So one of the things that it's a little more costly than I'd like to see. We planted this at about 20 pounds to the acre, and so based on seed cost and what we got out of it, you're looking at somewhere between $23 and $28 an acre to plant this, just for seed costs. So it is a little bit higher, but if you are grazing it, baling it, or if you really think that you're going to get a benefit of cycling those nutrients, it is a really nice cover crop. Once again, at about a month we have really nice biomass, but one that'll break down relatively quickly. So does have some benefits, does have a couple of drawbacks. Really just depends on what your goal is for something like this.